Hi, this is Laura Forehand from the Desert Sanctuary podcast. As we have authentic discussions about deconstruction and religious trauma, please be aware that some episodes may contain stories of sexual abuse and or suicide. Please take care of your mental health. We love you. Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Carl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show.
Hi everybody, it's Carl. Real quickly, thank you for joining us for the month of April. Our guest celebrity expert for this month will be Bob Miner. I hope you enjoy it. This is part 1 of 4, which represents about 2 to 3 hours of conversation that we've broken into bite-sized chunks. So, hope you enjoy part 1 and stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. We're missing the voice of our team, Laura. She's teaching school today, but we're lucky enough to have another teacher in our midst today. Welcome to the program, Bob Miner. Say hello, Bob.
Hi, it's good to be here. Thank you. I admire all the work you're doing, so it's nice to be included.
Yeah. Bob founded in 2001 the Fairness Project out of over 10 years of workshops, which he had led for religious, civic, business, and community groups regionally and nationwide. It was officially inaugurated with the publication of his first popularly written series, Scared Straight, Why It's So Hard to Accept Gay People and Why It's So Hard to Be Human. But he is a national resource for information on gender issues and gay-straight relationships for organizations, businesses, educational institutions, and media outlets for over 30 years. He has been speaking, consulting, leading workshops for over those 30 years. He's written 8 books, one of which is what we want to talk about today, which this release says it is his most popular book, and it's called When Religion is an Addiction. But once again, welcome to the program. I get my notes out of my face where I can see you again. But we, and I haven't read your book. I wish I would have, but so I don't know what you're going to say. But people used to say to me when I was a pastor coming out of church, one of the most common things they would say is, "Thanks for the fix." They'd say, "Thanks for stepping on my toes," but I know, I can take that with a grain of salt. That I gave them something challenging or whatever, and usually it's because I scared them and then gave them the solution. But they would say, "Thanks for the fix," and that. I didn't think about that much at the time, but then later on, now reflecting on it, it's a very big question. Are we addicted to religion, or can we be?
And that is the question. And I guess part of my coming to this as a sort of way to understand why people are stuck. When I wrote Scared Straight, it was, why are we stuck on this issue of accepting gay people? And I found it had to do with gender, which is, of course, playing out completely all around us now with transgender people. And then I wanted to ask, why are people stuck? No matter what science says, no matter what their experiences sometimes, they have to deny it. Why are they stuck in certain, I think he was thinking in terms of certain forms of religion. But I can see broadly that you can get stuck in a lot of things. I can know that from my life. And a counselor, popular speaker at that time was a fellow named John Bradshaw. And he he had a series of lectures it was on a cassette tape then. I think I still have them, but I can't play them. I don't have a cassette player anymore, I think, called Religious Addiction. And he was a brother in a Catholic order, and he was also he publicly talked about being a recovering coke addict. And one of his statements that struck me was, the high of righteousness is just like the high of cocaine. And so, okay, now that's an interesting statement from someone who knew both. So I began to look at this as, okay, and that's when I went into a study of addiction models. I was a religious studies professor still, but I was going to go into a study of addiction models, and did a lot of stuff on the science of addiction, and so on. And I said, that's it. I wrote in the book, When Religion is Addiction, my first chapter was called Religion Never Does Anything. And that meant good or bad. Mm-hmm. It's just the concept we have. It's a way of organizing words. It doesn't do anything. But people do things with all the pieces of religion. It meant to me that I don't want to blame religion. I want to blame what people are doing with all of these religious symbols and things. Mm-hmm. So that if you can have a person like Martin Luther King Jr. doing something with the same texts, the same books, the same history, the same traditions, as opposed to what was then Jerry Falwell was the big example of the other side. Mm-hmm. And so, there, of course, I'm suspicious of anybody who quotes scripture as the answer to something, but that's another story. I said, see, it's not in the books. It's not in the history. It's not in, those aren't the reasons for it. But those may be the excuses for you not facing your issues. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like the person who says, the liquor made me do it. Mm-hmm. And the interesting, it opened up a whole new way of looking at things for me. And the interesting thing was, people then would use religion as an excuse to not deal with their issues. And of course, certain religious positions then become bingo, because my goal is this religion will help you not deal with your issues, and it will also tell you what your issues are, and it will tell you how you should feel about all that. Right. Be happy in the Lord type of thing, Right. Oh, don't feel that way. You're not praying enough. And then I began to see that so many of these activities that were a part of how people were doing religion in an addictive way are like user activities for an addict. And I've known people who were in recovery and things like that. I'm not talking about religious recovery. I'm talking about recovery from drug, but religious recovery is your bailiwick, and I appreciate your writing on that. Yeah. But it's how they were reacting, and then I began to look into addictive thinking. And the first thing that I think my second chapter is called, Will We Call It an Addiction? Do we really want to call it that? Mm-hmm. Because it's, who wants to be known publicly for saying that? Well, true or not, But a lot of people don't, oh no, that's being too tough on people.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's all about, that starts the enabling. That's another discussion we can have of nice, liberal, quote unquote, people who don't want to offend anybody. And it's interesting that John Bradshaw also had a series of lectures called The Price of Nice, and how that kept people from dealing with issues,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
enabled the addicts around them.
Yeah, I understand that.
And so those are the sort of steps that I went through. And then I began to look at it in terms of, and I was basically focusing on what we'd probably call Christian fundamentalism. But I'm trained in Asian religions, and I taught Islam, I taught all of the world religion, and I found out, it happens in all of these.
Mm.
It happens in New Ageism for some people. And again, I want to say that I'm not getting into an argument about whether any of those things that we call those things, whether it's New Age or whatever, is good or bad. I have my opinions on that, but that's not where I think the problem is, because I think that arguing with a religious person who is an addict is like arguing with an alcoholic about whether or not vodka or tequila is better for you.
Mm.
It's something they love. Oh, it's a great argument because it doesn't get down to what their issues are. It lets them argue on the level of religion and not confront them with why in the world do you not see through this? And why do you need to hold on to it in a way that keeps you from seeing what you're really doing to yourself? And again, that's a common, if one were in an AA group or an NA group or an Al-Anon group, one would hear that stuff in the context that they're talking about there. Mm-hmm. Then I began to realize that American society, and most society, but certainly American society, promotes addictions. And one of the people I really liked was Ann Wilson Schaefer. I don't know if you're familiar with her. Mm-hmm. She was an addiction specialist. She called herself a recovering psychoanalyst. And she wrote books like When Society Becomes an Addict or The Addictive Organization. And one of the things she said was that one of the reasons why so much recovery doesn't work, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, so much of the kind of recovery is it doesn't deal with the society's need to have you as an addict, so that you don't deal with your issues, because society, our culture, makes tons of money off addictions, right? Yeah. That's certainly true of religion.
Different in the church.
Yeah, that's right. That's certainly true of religion addiction.
Yeah.
And we can point out all kinds of examples of that. So that's kind of the process I went through to sort of say, then how do I identify when I'm a religion addict? And of course, my book focused mostly on what we call, as I said, Christian fundamentalism, and how that worked, and then kind of the sort of history of Christian fundamentalism needing to move from its user activities in churches, like just pray more, just have more Bible, read the Bible more, just go whatever the formula is. Make sure you come to all three services, because real Christians come to Wednesday night prayer groups. Yeah. You know all this, and how it then moved, because addictions are always progressive. And if we're talking about getting a high from being the righteous one, then somewhere that high's got to multiply. And what happened was, going into politics was the new set of user activities. Hence, we've got such a strong a relationship now, right in front of us, between what I would call religion addicts and the political situation, because now the winds of politics become your new, causes you to feel the high of righteousness.
Right. Yeah. So that high of righteousness, can you just drill a little bit on that? I think I know what you're talking about. Where you feel we're right, God is on our side. Is that it? Is that kind of what you're digging at there?
That would be a lot of it, because if it's just my idea, okay, your idea is as good as anybody. But if I can claim it's God's idea, then I got the big guy on my side,
Mhm.
and I've got the universe on my side. And therefore, I don't, again, another reason why I don't have to question my ideas, because they're God's ideas. I wouldn't be against gay people, but God's against gay people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me. It's not my prejudice. It's God's fault.
Right.
The liquor made me do it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things. And I bet you'll just identify with this from your writings. It requires something. You are a total sinner.
Mm.
Because in order to do that, in order to get you into a need to feel righteous, someone's got to tell you, because you aren't righteous in yourself, by your own works. There's nothing you can do to do this. So I call that, in a chapter in Religious Addiction, the ultimate bad self concept.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here it is, the model of love for the universe, and the model of what a father should be for the universe. The model of love says, if you don't follow certain formulas, or says, let's make it even worse, you in yourself deserve eternal child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the righteous and loving thing from the model of righteousness and love. I mean, can anybody believe that unless they were prepared ahead of time to accept that? And I sort of think there are things in our culture that prepare us ahead of time to accept that kind of a theology that says you are so bad. Now, if I do buy into it, which of course you have to buy into it because you have to be saved, then I need to spend the rest of my life proving I'm still righteous in some sense. I need that high.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the user activities. Am I making sense? I hope I am.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't make sense.
Yeah, it certainly is.
And this fits in so much with the stuff you write.
Yeah. So we always talk about, one of the basic issues in religion is where do I find community? And we know from all aspects of our life, we have a deep need for connection. We need to connect to people and to something and to groups and those kind of things. So I don't think that part is at issue. But then we create a community that so kind of over meets that need initially, right? Laura calls it love bombing. We went to every church, that happened. And so that obviously does produce chemicals in your body, right? So chemicals are released into your body, and then the same thing happens when you hear a well-crafted sermon, when you listen to music and you sing together, when you put your arm around somebody and pray with them. Certain those things are at least regulatory. They regulate our nervous system, but then they also release those chemicals of, it's like how we can create food that tastes better than the original peach. And we're so scientific about that we can really elevate their mood and do that, draw them in, and then as they leave, it begins to fade. Right.
And that's equivalent to the science of addiction, of drug use, of alcoholism, of so on, is it creates that high, I'm going to call it. It creates that and gets you there. And one of the needs, I think, to feeling righteous is being among people who say you are.
Mm.
And so churches, if I might say this, don't sometimes function as recovery groups. They function as opium dens.
Mm.
In others, we're all in this together. And misery loves company.
Yeah.
And therefore the community can be, you're calling it overfunction. Yes, that's exactly it. Because again, the community can tell you how to feel, can tell you you're really this is the solution. Look, it's the solution for all of us. It must be right,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, to me, is that overfunctioning, and it's not a recovery community. It's not a community that relates. It is a community that is pushing the drug, pushing the high,
Mm.
pushing the addiction, and every single person in that community is in the same boat of needing the affirmation that they're righteous. And then, I mean, this is serious, deep, as you know, this is
Mm-hmm.
serious, deep stuff that needs recovery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it fits to me that it then has to have an opinion about all those people who say that's not the answer, right? And
Right.
so therefore
It's
it
the
has to be
other. Yeah.
righteous. Yeah, it has to be righteous. It has to be true. And those other people have to be the devil, the world. That's old fashioned stuff from fundamentalism. This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. If heaven's not my home, oh Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore.
Yeah.
But that changed with the moral majority, and when those religious people went into politics, then all of a sudden they were interested in the world.
Yeah.
Whereas before that time, fundamentalists were very much, that's the world. We're in the world, but not of the world. That kind of talk, and that all changed because they needed those new user activities of politics. New Year's Eve became to them, I don't know, election Eve when they won became to them like New Year's Eve to the drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Being very blunt, I think,
Yeah.
but it was that kind of, it's that kind of dynamic that I see there in this use of religion like this, um, to again not deal with our issues. My own experience, I was not caught up in this a lot, even though I always was at. I did get a master's degree at a fundamentalist seminary, or cemetery. Is that a Freudian slip? A fundamentalist seminary. But at the time, it wasn't so fundamentalist till the church later cracked down on it. And by the couple of years after I was gone, all the pat professors I had were gone. But I had this sense, and how I was beginning to get into the addiction was if I just had all my I's dotted, all my T's crossed theologically. And so I could have argued theology with people and stuff like that, but it was a way not to feel what was going on inside me.
Mm.
And so the logic, this getting caught up in that, can be a way, and it was for me, and I would have hated to have known me in a lot of that period. It was just, but again, that was becoming my way to be in my head, in my case, theologically, instead of my heart.
Yeah. You've mentioned a few times what we would call spiritual bypassing. That's from Robert Augustus Masters, who wrote a great book about shadow too. But so spiritual bypassing, the need, because like you say, these deep wounded things I have. So it's kind of psychological bypassing, but also spiritual bypassing when it's in with the church and all the things that go on there. So instead of dealing with it when things become uncomfortable, then I have platitudes and things that I can quote that will understand it better by and by. To go back to the old hymns, like you,
The promise of the future, they call that in AA.
yeah. So it's all going to be better, and we'll understand it better by and by, and so we can. God's going to do something, and so on, and all of that is spiritual bypassing, so that we don't have to do the hard work. I just went through, just to be real transparent and honest. Laura and I had a deep discussion the other night. It wasn't good, and it reminded me that number one, I'm still working, even though I've published books about how to deal with this and so on as a non-professional, but also not just that it was. I'm surprised it's not over, but I'm surprised how hard it is to really work on your mental health, to really deal with trauma and try to integrate it back instead of just bypassing it. So it's hard work. And one of the things I observed in pastors, especially in the evangelical world, like you're talking about, was so many of them had not done that work. The pastors, the leaders, the elders, they hadn't done that work. And for them, the drug was power. It was control. If I'm in leadership, everything that happens is going to be what I say happens. So nothing's going to trigger me. Nothing's going to, you know, so I have that and I get my high from the applause and the feedback that I get, and succeeding in my job like any other job. I'm not sure what the conclusion I'm trying to get, but just you see, you kind of mentioned who benefits from this, and it is the people that own the companies, it's the people that run the churches, it's they're they're getting everything, and then people are looking to them for help, and really just finding this sugar high that goes away on Monday.
And they need the high as much as those people now.
Mm.
And their high, the proof that they're righteous is the followers,
Mm-hmm.
is the money. In the same way that billionaires need more money because it's proof of who they are, and they're kind of addicted to that. They need that so much themselves, these pastors, and it has become their blick, their way of dealing or not dealing, let's say not dealing with whatever their issues are, that they can't give it up as easy. I mean, this we're talking about deep. You're right. We're talking about anybody who's in this realizes it is hard to get out. And that's why recovery groups, most methods of recovery have about a 50% chance of people sticking with it. And so those pastors are getting their high of righteousness, that they're right, by their followers. They need the followers more than the followers need those pastors, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's they are stuck. But what has proven to them that they're righteous is the power. I mean, think about that in terms of our politics. Think about how that's proved to the people who are so sick that they end up running governments like this. Mm. And they need the power. They can't give it up. And that very sense of I need power, I need this, and that is definitely one of the symptoms of just you need heavy counseling and probably some good psycho drugs, yeah, and stuff like that. You need it, but you're right. Getting into that, can you imagine? And this is why, can you imagine them saying, "Oh, I've been wrong"? I mean, I mean, everything they have to give up, not just the sense, not just the money, not just the leadership, which people have done, and that indicates people can leave addictions. But this, what they're going to have to give up about the thinking of themselves, because this is the way they got to heaven. They're going to get to heaven, not to hell, because they deserve hell. I mean, they really deserve it. Mm. And so, yes, I think the leadership, they're not just what I would call dealers of the addiction. They are also caught up in the addiction. And that makes it hard. And I want to be very sympathetic and empathetic with anybody who sees this and decides to work on it and not be at all, I mean, yes, but we're all working on it. We are in recovery. We have not recovered. It's like when someone says to me, well, when will I ever be perfect? Well, when will I ever be healed? I said, well, I think they're going to put on my tombstone, he spent his life healing. I don't think they're, and that's not so bad.
Not so bad.
But so, yeah, I'm trying to, yes, that makes so much sense why it's so difficult to people. And the work you're doing is difficult work because you are up against something that's so basic without even the fact that our society promotes addictions, including religion addiction.
Hey, it's Carl. I just want to jump in at the end here to remind you this is a 2 to 3 hour conversation that's been broken down into 4 parts. This is the first of 4. Hope you tune in for the rest of them. Also, check out Bob Miner at thefairnessproject.org and also his book, When Religion is an Addiction. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.